Good afternoon and welcome along to Steve Wraith's True Crime Podcast. Great to have another guest on. Marisa, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
No, thank you for agreeing to do it. Absolutely fantastic. And we're here really to talk about the book, which we've just been chatting off air 10 years ago now since this book came out. But a fascinating book, something I came across when it first came out. I know a few of my friends have commented that I've got you on the show. They're amazed that you've come on, which is great. That they're looking forward to hearing, some of the stories. But it's an amazing book, explosive true story of a mafia princess. They're lawless, they're criminal, their family. And yeah, I mean, let's go back to the start, Marisa. Where were you born? What was your childhood like?
I was born in 1970 in Milan, Italy. My family had originally come from down south, from Calabria, Milan. And I was born from a British au pair that was working in Milan at the time, my mother. And my father was from Calabria and lived in Milan with his family, and somehow they met, and I was the result of their relationship, and which was quite crazy at the time, because you're talking about the late 60s, early 70s. The mixture of cultures was quite rare at the time, especially with Italians. They wouldn't marry really the foreign girl, if you will. So I've had to grow up with sort of two very opposite cultures in everything. And from the food, the family, it's like chalk and cheese, I guess. I mean, it's been a roller coaster, to say the least.
Yeah.
But of course, I didn't choose to whom I was born. Not that, I love my father and I love my mother, bless her, she's passed away now. But, there's a lot ifs and buts and to go back to, and it is what it is. And we make our own decisions, don't we? Our paths are set in a way. I believe in fate somehow. But then
of course. Yeah. Was it a happy childhood?
Yeah. I remember from the age of when I was born to 9 years old, I used to go to my grandmother's all the time. They lived in the Piazza Prealpi. That's where everything occurred in Milan. Then the organisation was running the area, and I was actually born on her kitchen table, my nan's kitchen table. I was actually born at home on her kitchen table. And because my mother had problems, I mean, some people find this really, but have problems with breastfeeding. My grandmother actually breastfed me. Right. So I mean, in the Victorian era, you used to have wet nurses, didn't you? And it was quite the norm. But I'm talking about 1970, and she just had my auntie, which was a month older than me. So my father's younger sister was just born a month before me. So of course my grandmother breastfed me, which some people feel a bit about that, but I'm just trying to say, how much of a bond I had with my grandmother. And even years later, when I left, when I was 9, my mother took me away because the family was getting very involved in a lot of illegal activities, which my mother didn't want me to sort of be around. So she took me away. She brought me back to the UK, to Lancashire, and then I sort of grew up normal, whatever normal is. High school, I didn't know any English when I was 9. I had to go to primary. I learned within 2 years I was talking and reading and writing like a child of 11. Mm-hmm. So went to high school, did all my high school. But of course, then my mum took me back every year. Yeah. So every year for 5 weeks of the summer holidays, I was in Italy, seeing my family again, being there, yearning, loving to be there. Because, of course, I had a small family in the UK. They weren't as warm as if I can say that, you know, as my Italian family. I mean, there it was looking out for one another. Everybody was the same. You were loved. You were, you know, and of course spoiled. That came into it. My grandmother, you know, she'd taken something off my auntie to give it to me, and she did various times, you know, clothing, and well, my auntie wasn't very happy about that, but you know, it's just that. So I longed for that, the very much the family, being with them, the warmth and everything. So
it's very much part of the Italian culture, isn't it? Family and being together, and a lot of them living all in the same, under the same roof.
Oh yeah, I mean, my nan used to, in between dealing what she was doing, get up in the morning at 6 a.m. and start cooking. Then at dinner time, there'd be 20 at the table. I mean, they wouldn't live with us, my uncles and aunties, but they'd come for dinner, for tea. There could be 30 at tea time. You know, it was normal that. It wasn't, you know, and it was accepted, of course. Yeah.
Although you were living away from your father, is it fair to say that the bond probably grew stronger, and you were very much like a daddy's girl? I mean, I've got 2 daughters. I know what the bond is like with my 2 girls, and I don't know, it's a very hard thing to describe, but you're certainly more protective of girls, I think. And was that kind of the relationship that you had with your dad?
Yeah, I mean, throughout my childhood, my dad was here, there, and everywhere. He was never settled in one place, especially in Italy. He was always abroad. And so it's very rare that I would see him. But he was on my pedestal. He was up here. He was my idol, and it made him even more mysterious, this man that was my father. And everybody sort of respected, and when he was there, you know, everybody, it's like they were bowing to him, if you will. You know, it was important. I could feel that as a young girl. There was a bit of animosity from my other uncles, because he was my grandmother's favourite. He was the eldest, and I could feel the animosity sometimes. As I grew older, I'm talking about. And then, of course, after my schooling, then I went over one year, met my daughter's father. He's Italian. Ended up marrying him, having my daughter. He was working in the organisation. My father wasn't happy about that.
Well, let's talk about the organisation, because we haven't really hit that yet. And your dad, you know, Emilio, you know, was a very powerful man in Italy, and you know, he was involved in crime, but he was also involved in one of the most powerful gangs in Italy, wasn't he?
Yeah, it was the 'Ndrangheta mafia. So you got the mafia Cosa Nostra in Sicily. The 'Ndrangheta is Calabrian, and you've got Gomorrah in Naples. Just distinct, they're all distinctive, you know, to each of their own. And he was actually born into that. He wasn't just, you know, we've come from generation of that, probably going back 200-300 years at least of mafia, if you will. You know, there's so many. It was my grandmother's side that was it was part of that. They were the ones. They were called the Serraino in southern Italy, in Calabria, and they were very well known to be a family not to be sort of not to go against, I guess. I mean, they were at war in the 90s with other families. There's a lot of casualties. You know, we took military weapons down there to win the war for them. I personally did that at one occasion. I was probably about 20 at the time, so it's quite surreal, really. But you know, at that time, I got heavily involved at 18 within the family organisation, and then as my father sort of went further and further afield in what he was doing, so it was Class A drugs, mainly that, and cannabis. He went very much towards the end because there was a market for it. So he was coming to the UK as well. He was dealing with quite big families down in London with it. So but before that, it was Class A drugs and weapons. We're talking about, you know, explosives, bazookas, AK-47s. It wasn't. So of course, when it all came crashing down, they all got a long, long time partly because of that.
When you were younger, when you were, you know, a child growing up, I mean, I think I read, obviously, you know, when you were 7, you were in court to see your dad. I think he was brought into court on a stretcher. I think that was for the handling stolen goods charge. And then, you know, I think 13, I think you visited your dad. I think, was he convicted of murdering another rival?
Yeah.
And you were visiting him in jail. So you know, in those early years, what was going through your mind? You know, can you remember at those ages about why you were seeing your dad in court, why you were seeing your dad in prison, and can you remember what it felt like to see him in that position?
Well, the occasion with the stretcher, he'd been shot. It was a drive-by shooting, which they didn't know he was there who did it. And it was someone he'd met that they were aiming for, but didn't realise my father was there. Anyway, he got shot, and of course, police were after him at that time, and they got him. And I just remember I looked at him, and he had this long beard and long hair, and he looked like Jesus with this white on this stretcher with this white sheet. Honestly, just look. And I remember wanting to jump over the barriers and going to him. I was quite upset, to be honest. And looking back on it, I feel I shouldn't have been taken there, because it's affected, you know, it's there, it's always there. And I don't know whether it's because he's got a young daughter, she's 7, and I was I'm not without, you know, not saying anything about my family, but, you know, at that time they did we've got the child, let's take the child and show that, you know, he's a father as well as whatever he's doing. I don't like to particularly say that, but that's how it was, you know. And I guess you were used in a way, but of course they love you, you know. But that affected me quite a lot. And so all this time, of course, you sort of know your father's different, but you can't quite. It's never explained to you. It was when I was 13. He'd been on the run. He was a fugitive. He'd shot a rival. This guy was very. He was sort of a liability, as in, he was crazy. He wanted my father to be involved. I mean, I'm going into quite a deep thing, but the guy didn't have a weapon. The guy was getting his keys out, and my father thought it was a weapon and shot him. So, and I'm not saying that it was either my father or him. It was that sort of situation. So that's how I saw it. Not saying I agreed with what he did, but if it's a self-defense, or he thought it was going to be him being shot, then I sort of got my head around that as a young girl. But he was in America for a long time. He was a fugitive and got arrested over there, and then was extradited back to Italy. So he got a life sentence, and then it was reduced to manslaughter. But that wasn't. That was the appeal courts being paid off.
Right.
That was not because his appeal went well. So that's how corrupt, especially Italy, is. So money talks very much. Well, it did then. I'm not sure about now. So I went to see him in the Palmer prison, and even that wasn't normal, because he had a suit and looked really smart. And when you go into an Italian prison, you can take 5 kilo package every week. So half of it can be clean clothes, and the other half can be cooked food.
So it's like Goodfellas, really. Like Goodfellas, where they're all standing in the same cell, cutting up the garlic and making the spaghetti and meatballs and all of that.
Yes, but my father went a step further from that. He was in a suit, away from everybody else. And then it came out later that he was literally had the governor in his back pocket. And he even went to the governor's house for tea while he was inside.
Wow.
You know, it's like, that's how far and how much, you know, and you know, that's what I saw. So it was like as if he was a little bit untouchable, even though he was in there. Then he ended up going, because of his gunshot wounds earlier on, he had problems, and he ended up paying a consultant to get him into the hospital. He was on arrest, he had a guard outside, but he did what he wanted. Had his
Yeah.
guys going to meet him. So he was running everything from a hospital room. You know, it was crazy, I guess. But when you see that, it was then at 13 that I thought, he's someone, this is someone, you know, and I'm thinking, this is not legal. I don't think it's legal, but no one, I know people think, oh, well, do they sit down and tell you? No one sat me down. You wouldn't talk to the children with things like that. It was things you pick up. Sometimes they talk in front of you and wouldn't realise you were there. You had a little mouse around them. And of course, that happened as you got older. You know, there's certain things probably that I shouldn't have known that I knew were going to happen. That you obviously keep to yourself. But which one of them, I don't know if you want me to talk about it. I talk openly, you know, when I do my conferences. I do criminology conferences and that. But because people ask me, well, they asked me, have you ever killed anyone? So I'm actually not going to stand there. Yeah, of course. But I'm laughing. Sorry, I don't mean to be. But I haven't, thank God. Thank the Lord I haven't. Because that would be something else I'd have to carry with me. So, but I was put in a position where I would have had to make them choices if I had to. Yeah. You know, when my father was arrested and I had to take over for about a year, I was put in a position where I would have had to make my own calls. You know, so going back to, I knew that there was a guy in our area that had stepped, he did something with the Gomorrah and he did something wrong to them. And a really high up Gomorrah guy came to see my father and my grandmother and said, look, he's done this and we were going to take him out. Can we do it on your turf? So what people don't realise is that, of course, that's how it works. You know, you see it in the movies, but that is how it works. And had my father and my grandmother said no, it could have created a war for us.
Yeah.
Or if we'd have ever needed, you know, it's all that, and I'm not justifying it by all means, and I'm not, and that's what happened. And I overheard a conversation about it in the kitchen, and it was going to be done the next day because they gave the go ahead. And I knew this guy. I knew he had 2 children. I knew his family, and I knew him. And I obviously didn't say anything. But what was I meant to do? Go to my grandmother and father and say, oh, you can't do that. Go to the law. Go to what? And then have all my family arrested. You know, it's that, you know, people say to me, you've changed since then. I haven't. I've just changed my views, my way of thinking. I've changed my life, as in the way my thoughts are, and I haven't changed a person.
No,
I haven't, you know, but I don't break the law. You know, I don't, now I don't, you know, I don't even speed. You know, I'm like really sort of, because I just feel that I can't, you know, prison is punishment rehabilitation. So I did 4 years inside and I was punished. But to use the word of rehabilitation, when you rehabilitate, you go back, don't you? You go back.
Of course.
When you've got a broken leg, you go back. So it's more habilitation, isn't it? But you become, you get used to it and you become another person. I mean, we're all different for whether you commit a crime or not. You're different from what you were 18 years old. You evolve within yourself, in your way of thinking, you mature. So, but you are that person still. And I just try and put across, you know, I don't want people to think, oh, well, she's changed now and she won't break the law. Of course, I won't break the law, but I'm still me. Yeah. And I don't want people to think that I am a different person. That really grates me, that, for some reason. I don't, you know.
I understand that, yeah.
Yeah, hopefully where I'm coming from with that. And I just feel, you know, back then, I mean, I speak fluent Italian, so I'll just go from a Lancashire accent straight to, And that baffles people, you know, and
That's the thing, isn't it? It's the Lancashire accent, this accent, which it just doesn't add up, you know. But when you know your story and when you read your book, you go, wow, now you can see why, you know. I want to talk a little bit about your gran, because obviously when I first read the book, my grandparents were still alive, and I always found that a fascinating part of the book. You know, we've all, you know, when you think of a grandma, you think of her in a rocking chair, knit one, purl one with her knitting, and that kind of thing. But your nickname, the nickname for your gran, is Granny Heroin, which of course is in reference to the vast drug smuggling empire that you ran. I mean, that for me, I found that quirky, but it made me look at my grandma in a different light, thinking, I wonder if, you know, my gran would have ever done anything like that if she'd been in that way, or born into that kind of way or family. But I found it fascinating. But she was a very generous woman as well, wasn't she?
Yeah, I mean, I know that's, you know, the side that people think, but they've got to look at it. I mean, I've done my criminology degree now. I've just passed my honours, which well done. Someone like me, thank you. For someone like me, you know, it's a big deal. I mean, just to be accepted back in society, it's been a struggle, and it's still hard now. Yeah, because people label you, and that's it. But you know, so I've looked at the academic side of it. You know, it's been a roller coaster there, because it's been very emotional for me, because it's the biological, sociological, everything side of it. What brings you to that, to commit a crime, to that environment where you are, your acceptance, everything else. So doing that with my grandma, you know, that woman, she would feed stray dogs. She would give anything to anyone, her last penny in her pocket. That's the sort of woman she was. Yet she was so ruthless. But you've got to understand, she came from down south. She had no education. She signed a name with an X. Yet this woman was in the Italian archibalds, the law books, the highest ones, of the most highest ranking mafia woman that's ever been. Yet she couldn't write a name. You know, and she, you know, the knitting, she used to knit. You know, the rocking chair, she had that. All that you're describing, that's her. But then there was that ruthless side. It was business. It was my kids are getting fed. That's the only way that she saw. And of course, the background, the history, where she's come from, there's always been dodgy dealings. So that's how she's grown up. She's not grown up with a 9-to-5 job around her. She's grown up in an environment where that was that, and you survived. We're talking about the 60s, going into the 70s, survived, you know. I'm not trying to justify what she did, but she was feeding 12 children she had. She was feeding 12 children. You know, some of my aunties and uncles became heroin addicts and died of it.
Yeah.
And I'm
One
not
died
ashamed.
of AIDS as well, yeah.
Yeah, because of shared needles. She was very young, in 86 that was, you know, just as it came out, the AIDS situation. And, you know, I'll openly admit that she did give her kids the drugs as well, because she told everybody they weren't allowed to sell it to them. So they'd go outside Milan and get absolute rubbish and potentially could overdose. Yeah. So in her mind, it was, well, I know what I'm giving them and I'm going to, but the time she'd sent them to rehabilitation, you know, to clinics, private clinics, to get dried up, it was all in vain, because as we know, them drugs, you know. But what I'm saying is, she paid for that, because she lost, well, through it, she's lost about 4 of her children.
Wow.
Through
Tragic.
To do with heroin. So,
Absolutely,
you know, she did pay. I mean, this is a woman that used to pray and would give a lot to the church as well. You know, a lot to the church, Catholic, of course. And I think that might have been as part of, hopefully my sins won't, you know, it'll level off my sins. But that's what I'm trying to say. There's it's not just black and white. Oh, nonna eroina, that's what they used to call her, you know. It's not. There's something in the back of that. I'm not saying it's, as I said, I'm not trying to justify it. She did what she did. And I mean, you know, this lady, she was still on house arrest, bless her. She died a couple of years ago. till 87 on house arrest. She had a frame, a Zimmer frame. I'm sorry, I'm laughing, but they said her body might be going, but her mind is
But her mind's still active.
It's like,
Brilliant.
and they're just like, she's 87. What can she cause? But
It's
they wouldn't.
fascinating.
They just wouldn't, but she was a lovely, generous, do anything for you, anything. But then order a killing, I guess. So it's one of them.
It is. Well, at your grandmother's house, you mentioned earlier that you found love and you had a child. This is where you met Bruno, wasn't it? And this was the beginning of a rare moment, I suppose, in your life story where you and your father, didn't speak for a year. He wasn't happy with your choice of boyfriend.
No, because he wanted me to have a doctor or a solicitor as a boyfriend.
Yeah. And of course, Bruno worked for the firm, didn't he?
Well,
he worked
to
for
be
the
fair,
family.
yeah, but to be fair, he was friends with my uncle and became involved in it.
Yeah,
but he came from a baker's family. And they're quite wealthy. He'd had private tuition. So he hadn't grown like my uncles and my family had, which was on the streets, and it's survival, no education. A lot of them just bunked school. They didn't, and that was their life. That's what they did, the little dealings and that. He came from the outside of that. He came from quite his life was, what's the word for it? Quite spoiled, I guess. So
yeah,
it was sort of, he's the black sheep of the family. So, but he may as well, the way he was and acted, he may as well have been born into that life because that's how he was. Unfortunately for his parents. But of course, I didn't actually like him at first because he had a lot of girls after him and he was a bit of a womanizer. So I was like, who does he think he is? And then he just made me laugh. He actually just made me laugh.
That's the way to a girl's heart, you see. Laughter is the way to a girl's heart. A lot of men know that.
Yeah, I guess he did. Yeah, at the time. I was only 17, so.
Yeah, but you fought hard. Your grandma put a word in for you, and eventually your dad succumbed to the love that developed between you and Bruno. Let's fast forward a little bit though to another arrest for your dad and him summoning you to the prison in Coimbra in Portugal. It was a high security prison. He was there, and you were asked to visit him, and he wanted you to basically take over the running of the family.
Yeah, that's right. Basically I was his messenger. I was the one. He was actually giving me made gifts, the gifts that they did in a prison. So one of them, I've actually still got that. It's like wood. Yeah, it's a wooden box, a jewelry box, and in the lining there'd be all the little notes and messages, and I've still got that. And sorry, we're just going back there and
reminiscing. No, it's nice.
It's just memories, isn't it? Crazy times. And I'd give him out to all his men, and then of course, obviously, it was him that was running it really from in there. But on the outside, I was running it to a certain extent, and also had to make on the spot decisions. So because you couldn't just ring him, or we couldn't just, so it was and then that's going back to what I said before. Had any rivals tried to do anything, or had there been, I would have had to make hard decisions. And to this day, I'm very honest in what I say. I can't say, oh no, I would never have given the go ahead of having to, someone to be gone. Or I can't say yes or no. I can't. And when I'm here now, I'm not going to lie about it. I'm not going to.
You're a different person now, though, Marisa. You're older, wiser. You've got the experience of life, and you were only 22, and that's a young age. And I suppose you'd do anything to please your father, and it is understandable. That's what I got out of it when I read your book. you were arranging his escape at one point, but unfortunately that went pear-shaped, didn't it?
Yeah. We had an arms dealer from Holland that we managed to get some mercenaries. So because there was the Yugoslavian war at the time, we managed to, in pieces, get a helicopter over from Yugoslavia down to Portugal. And but it all came to light. But they'd actually been paid and everything. Cost a lot of money as well. And it all came to light, and of course it didn't happen. But then I guess that's why sort of he was already held in high security.
Yeah.
And then of course later, yeah.
You married Bruno, didn't you? And then obviously you had your daughter Laura as well. But I think as well, did you help your dad's partner and child over the border and escape at one point as well?
Yeah. I mean, it was far easier in them days, wasn't it, to cross the borders? But got facial recognition and everything now, so you wouldn't be able to. No, it was when my dad got arrested in Portugal. I made it so I didn't go and see him because he was a fugitive at the time. And this was in 92. And so I had my daughter in 91 and my father had his daughter, my sister, in 92. So my sister, my daughter's older than my sister, basically. So my father got arrested and I was in Sardinia at the time. I had to fly back, leave my daughter there with her father, fly to Portugal. Never been there before. Just remember getting a cab from Lisbon, going down to Vila Moura, being told which police station. I went to see him. He said, right, you Valeria, which was his partner, has been arrested, but Giselle, your sister, and her grandmother, was left at the villa. You need to go there, pick them up, take them to Spain, and fly them off from Malaga. So we've got a solicitor in Malaga waiting there, to help us. And so in this cab, then I went on to Villa Moura, still in this old Mercedes. I didn't even know how it made it, but I guess it did because it's the old Mercedes that, and I mean old. And went to the villa, got the grandmother, got my sister. My sister was literally a few months old. And I just said, just pack one bag, just get in this, got into the cab. We crossed the border about midnight. And because Giselle was asleep, they thought I had Laura on my passport. So the customs thought that because they couldn't see how big she was, that this baby was Laura. Thankfully, because if not, she was on a mother's passport, which the police had. So it was just a nightmare. And I mean, it took 24 hours in this cab with this baby, with the luggage and the grandma. And it was just chaos. And I was 22. I mean, I look at my children, one's nearly 30 and one's 20 next. And I dread the thought of just giving them any sort of responsibility. Like, never mind what I was doing.
Yeah.
But of course, writing my book, even my ghostwriter said, I mean, that was a therapy to me. And he said, look, if you weren't capable, they wouldn't have allowed you to do it.
Yeah.
So, of course, that just tells you everything, doesn't it? If
of course it does.
They'll have seen, yeah.
Yeah, you were part. You were part of. No need to apologize. You were born into the mob at the end of the day, and it was the way it is. It's a family business. It's not looked as gangsterism. It's not looked at as crime. It's a way of surviving. You said that about your grandmother before. She had mouths to feed. She had to feed them any way she could, and up until 87, she's still classified as one of the most dangerous criminals in her neighborhood. It's no wonder that this rubbed off on you and influenced you, but you had the foresight when your first daughter was born, when Laura was born, to try and change your life, and obviously you moved back to the UK, but unfortunately that was just the beginning of your problems, because obviously you decided to take some money out of a Geneva account so you could buy a house in the UK, start afresh. You withdrew the £200,000, but then you were arrested for money laundering. So your problems were only just starting, weren't they?
Yeah. Yeah, I did. When Nora was born, it was a slap in the face, and I thought, this is serious. You can't. But of course, the deed was done. I couldn't take it back. Everything
Yeah.
I'd done before that, I couldn't take it back. So, yeah, I came over. I sort of thought I found a bit of a sanctuary with my mother over here in the UK. And for a year, I thought I was okay, and then I wasn't. I just became custom excise early one morning, and 1st of June, actually, 1994, they came and took me away. I think the hardest part was leaving Lara. She was 2.5 at the time. Because people asked me what was the hardest part of being taken out of prison, and that's my child.
Of course.
That was, the hardest. And she was 7 when I came out. She was 2.5, but I did do wrong, and they did arrest me, and of course then I was made a double Cat A, held like a terrorist, and shipped to Durham, H-Wing, most notorious women's prison at the time. It held child killers, arsonist. It was the last stop before sort of Rampton, if you will, because a lot did belong in there. Even though they were kept on there. And it was all surreal for me. It took me about 2 weeks to actually realise, oh my God, where I was. And that's when I got to Durham. And it's like, because I was remanded, all of them were convicted in there. So there's no one there below 12 years. That was either armed robbery, life sentence, they were all lifers, or anything really serious crime, obviously. So it's hit me, I'm never going to get out of here now. I'm just not going to get out. And of course, you hold your innocence, don't you? Sort of. And I didn't do anything. Because you don't want. And I guess people, the people in there. I mean, the first instance when I went into the wing, the PO at the wing introduced me to Martina Anderson, and she was an IRA in the Brighton bombing in '86. And he said, "Oh, this is Martina and Ella. They're going to show you around the wing and just let you get used to it, because you're a Cat A like them. They're your they had like what do you call it when you have you sort of lifers are their own representative, and the Cat A's are they're your representatives." And so they were showing me around this wing, and it almost felt like I was in a hotel. It wasn't a hotel, but it's the way I was shown.
Yeah, this is here, and that's where.
yeah. That's where you do washing. That's the kitchen. That's the gym. And it was like, oh, okay. So, and then I was on the first floors, and I went to a table where there was a black and blue tablecloth, checked, and a big bunch of lilies. And I thought, well, this is next to my cell. I'm going to sit here. I need to eat. So sat down, and Linda Calvi sat next to me and said, I don't know if you know Linda Calvi from London.
I know Linda very well, yeah.
Yeah. She says, oh, I'm Linda from London, blah, blah. And this is, my table. And those lilies are from Reggie Cray. So I was like, oh, okay. Right. Okay. That was my first sort of meeting with Linda. And I think they realised more who I was than because I am myself and I'm very down to earth. I would never, ever, oh, this is me, Mafia Princess. I mean, that's the name that the papers gave me anyway. So I just used it. Yeah. So I used it for my own, like you've posted it, but for my own, then. So for my book.
Yeah.
And of course, that's how it's known, how I'm known. But I was never one to, I was quite, I'd rather be in the corner and watch everybody else than be the loud one and be known I was there, if you can understand that. So that's why I'm saying they sort of knew more about me than I thought at the time, obviously. And of course, there'll be an element of being intrigued. You know, I never had a mafia person in there. And I know you get the gangs and the organised crime, but of course, when it's to do with that, and it's old school, you know, this is old school. It's quite rare, I guess, to have someone.
You mentioned child killers, and two of the most notorious child killers, of course, were in Durham with you at the time. And you know, despicable people. You know, to be thrust into the middle of that, especially when you were a mother yourself, must have been horrendous. But tell us a little bit about Rose West and Myra Hindley.
It's hard because one very menacing, Myra, the aurora, her demeanor, everything about her, very menacing. And I was trying to think, is it because, you know, my mum was very interested in sort of serial killers and I'd read books years before when I was a young girl about the Moors murders. And in my mind, I was thinking, is it because I already know? So you sort of think, but it wasn't. It was that feeling. It was that there was something. I guess some of us are quite sensitive to things like that. Like we know straight away who we're going to like and who we're not going to like. Or you get a vibe or something. And Myra had that horrible vibe about her. Rose West, on the other hand, as I said many times, she was like the woman in the next Tesco queue. You know, it was, you looked at her and you're like, this is a serial killer. And of course, but that's the thing, you know, the thing of it, of you would know. I mean, people look at me and they would never believe of my past. So appearances can be very deceiving. But of course, over time, in general, whilst in Durham, you know, the masks came off. You saw what people were about in there. Doesn't matter how innocent they screamed and shouted. Eventually, their personality, what they were, especially with someone like Rose West, you know, she'd foam at the mouth if she was angry. You'd see her, you'd sort of think, how dare you even, you know, get yourself worked up like that? Because everything you have, you deserve it. You know, everything that's coming to you, you deserve it. You've taken them lives. And of course, I was in there. I was being punished. They were being punished. You know, I wasn't for one. People say to me, oh, why didn't you slap him? Why didn't Myra had been in 30 years. So I don't know what I could have done to her that already hadn't been done to her. I suppose I could have knocked a walking stick off and made her fall down. But, you know, it's to me, the worst thing I could have done to them, which I did, was ignore them.
Yeah.
It was like they weren't there. Because that, I feel, hurts someone more than acknowledging them or being nasty with them, being kind to them or whatever. For someone to feel that they don't exist, I think is the worst thing. You know, and of course, I wasn't there to have my privileges being taken away. You know, I had my child to call every night. That was my priority. My daughter is being called every night. I don't care about them. They stay out my way. I don't want anything to do with them. I mean, obviously, it was, you know, you can't just stay out the way because they're there. You know, you're living on a wing where you shower, you know, you shower, you eat, everything there.
Couldn't picture getting a shower with Rose West would be very appealing. Like,
don't even go there. There was a moment where I did get out of the shower and she was just stood there like that and just stark naked, and I'm thinking, what is she doing? I'm like, and I just remember, I just looked over and just looked away, and I thought, just shaking my head, you know, and thinking, I'm not even this woman. And of course, you know, later on thinking about it, there was an episode with Myra where she looked me up and down, and I mean, I was 25, 26, very fit. I did 4 hours a day of gym at the gym, very fit. You know, they probably thought, oh, you know, I'm not saying it makes me feel sick, just the thought of that.
Yeah.
But looking back on it,
it's just really creepy.
It's creepy, and the way, you know, she looked, and and both of them, they just it's just not nice. But as I said, you're surviving in there. You're keeping your head together. I mean, thankfully, you know, and not knocking anybody who does take anything, but I never needed any tablets, and I still don't need any tablets, you know, and I can hold my head high with that. Thankfully, I'm too much of a controlling person. I just like to, you know, but a lot of the women in there were on medication, you know, and so I was very aware what was going on, but I just chose to try and put it in the back of my mind. That's what I'm trying to say, you know, to
Does prison work, Marisa? Because, you know, for me, I've spoken to a lot of criminals over the years. I've written a lot of criminals books, and you know, for me, there seems to be this huge issue, you know, especially nowadays, even more so nowadays, that there's a vicious system. I saw a documentary that you were on, obviously, the other week about Myra Hindley and Rose West, and there was another girl who was on there, Julie McAllister, who I think was in Durham. Maybe he's not at the same time as you, but she was the one who was on the documentary who knocked Rose West out. She was from Newcastle. She's struggling massively. You know, she's in a bail hostel at the minute, and she just feels like, you know, she's on a roller coaster, and she's going to end up back in prison. And there's a lot of people who I speak to feel exactly the same way, that that they're just going to end up back in prison. Sometimes they feel as if it's going to be better just going into prison because that's the best place for them. There's no rehabilitation anymore, Marisa. It just seems that people are stuck in this mental rat. And drugs seems to be the biggest issue.
Yeah, yes, it is. I'm a great believer that prison does not work. Depends on the person.
Yeah.
And depends on when you get out and the opportunities and things. I struggled a lot. You know, you become institutionalized massively. I was kicked out with 2 bin liners from one day to the next. I didn't know I was coming because I came out on a technicality. I was in Italy, been inside 4 years. And I had 2 bin liners, was told at the end, half a mile down the road, there was a bus stop. Scorching heat in Italy, and they gave me about 30,000 lira, which would have been about £20.
Yeah.
And I was in shock. And you know, I got this bus. Everybody's looking at me. You know, I've just come out of the prison, and it's not. It's so. Firstly, no, prison doesn't work because it's a vicious circle. Unless people, the minds can change, and unless there's opportunities for them when they go out in work, employment, in you know, getting somewhere to live, because you lose everything when you go in. You lose your children, you lose your home, your furniture, you lose everything. You have to start from scratch. You're out with these bin liners.
Yeah.
So what do they expect? You know, it's like the release on a Friday. What are you doing over the weekend when you can't get to them on a Monday? You know, it's all these little things. I mean, I'm very much for the women as well, because prisons are not built for women.
No.
Yet the regimes are like the men's. Women have different needs from men's. And I'm not saying that shouldn't be as harsh, or I'm not saying men shouldn't be as harsh. What I'm saying is, because we have different needs. I mean, just one example. And 2 toilet rolls a week, 1 pack of Tampax a month, or pads. Sorry, don't want to.
Yeah.
What's that? You know, some women need far more than that. You know, some days you could go in my house 2 toilet rolls in a day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You know, it's and it's not. I know it seems it's like, but all things like that start affecting your mental health. The person, you're already stripped of everything. You're stripped of your freedom. You're stripped of even almost your name, because it's your surname and your number. You've been punished in court. The prison should be where you're. I'm not everyone, you know. I don't want to make any different, you know, like you could go on about paedophiles and things like that. I mean, they're a different category. Rapists, paedophiles, it's a different. I think they just need help there, which they don't get. They don't get, do they? It's rare that they do classes and things, but I just feel if you start, I mean, I've been in prison and taught. I've been to Pentonville and Lancaster Farms, and just by showing them that they're not a name and number, that they are someone's brother, someone's son, someone's uncle, and it's the keeping in that you are still human. I'm not saying mollycoddled, and I'm not saying, but that person is an individual. That person is important to somebody out there. Just because they have made a mistake, they have committed a crime, they have, the child killers I was in, the ones that smothered the partner's child, got 8 years. Yeah, the armed robber got 18 years.
It's crazy, isn't it? There's no middle ground. It's just, I suppose it depends which judge you're up in front of, doesn't it?
Yeah, and also I feel that money, anything to do with money, they look at it in more harsh than anything that involves money, like drugs, weapons, anything like that, jewelry, robberies. It's like it's worse than a life.
Yeah. Yeah.
It can't. Yeah, of course you're right about which judge, but also there's an element of, I found that every time that was the case, it wasn't just a one-off there and a one-off there. It's every time that was the case, and the child killers were actually, I'm not talking about Rose and Myra, different ones, other ones that were there. They were more mollycoddled. They were like, the ones that used to go, you just looked at them funny, they'd go and tell the officer.
Yeah.
So you're just asking for me to be, it's just one of them. But as I said, it's like someone knows from the first day they walk inside there whether when you've done wrong and whether you repent or not. So because someone could be inside 20 years, come out within 6 months to do the same crime and go back in.
Yeah.
So
it's
that's
definitely something that needs to be looked at, Marisa. There's no doubt about it, but it's going to be a long process. We've got 10 minutes left. I just want to finish off and obviously give your book a plug again. But when you came out of prison, obviously you'd missed some crucial years of your daughter growing up. Obviously you'd split from Bruno, but you found a new love of your life, Frank. And sadly that didn't quite work out as well as you would have hoped either.
No, it didn't. Well, to be fair, Frank, I used to get a lot of mail in prison, and Frank happened to be one of them. And everyone I used to sort of say, I'm married, even though I'd left my husband by that time. I'm married, and I can't write to you. But for some reason with Frank, I just thought, it's just a nice, genuine guy, just wants a pen pal. Which I used to look at the other girls and they used to fall in love with the pen pals, and I used to think, they're crazy. What are they doing? What's going on there? So then he was like, oh no, I'm only this age and this and that. So then Frank became massively part of my life in prison. For 4 years we wrote, I'm sorry, I've got someone at the door.
Oh, have you?
For 4 years, yeah. And for 4 years, I'm just going to move, but I'm just
go on.
Sorry,
go for it. Don't worry.
I don't know if it's a postman or sorry.
It's the postman.
Get that if you don't.
Go for it. It's on the hoof. Go for it.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm just on the phone. It's okay. Sorry about that.
That's a classic. Don't worry about it. That's the beauty of live broadcasts.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you. So he was a massive part of my life in prison, and he wrote to me for 4 years, big A4, double-sided, 10 pages every few days.
Yeah.
And I kept him going, he kept me going. And then when I came out, I still wanted to obviously see him and meet him. He had another year left. He was a Cat A, and I really fell in love with him. But sometimes when you write things on paper, it's probably far more than you would in real life. So you probably knew me far more than maybe someone in real life would, and say vice versa, but he told me that he'd given up that life and blah blah, and that was it. And obviously I believed him, and he came out, and then within time he was just pulled back in, and that was very much to do with this pride of things and things that had gone on why he was in there, the people that had let him down. Anyway, he was pulled back into that world, and unfortunately, he was shot in Leeds. I was 3 months pregnant with his son, Frank. Again, Frank, I called him Frank. So he was never able to obviously meet his child and live a good life that he could have. But he'd been inside 10 years.
Yeah.
And he'd been pulled back in within months. Within 6 months, he died. Which was awful, obviously, at the time. And there's still part of him in my heart. Very much in love with him when he died. And big respect to him. He was a gentleman. Not many people will probably think that. He was quite a rogue as well, and probably had a lot of enemies as well. And but to me, he was my Frank, and he was a gentleman. And unfortunately, we just weren't able to have a life together.
Your mother sadly passed away in 2012 at Christmas time, but that drew you closer to your dad. And you had the feeling that you wanted to go back across and see your dad. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, I have done. I've been in touch with him, and I've been to see him. We FaceTime all the time. He's now a 70-year-old retired guy.
He's retired. He's definitely retired.
Oh yeah, retired. No more in that life. No more in anything like that. He's just living. He's a pension. He's a pensioner now. You wouldn't think so because he's very fit. Yeah, and very, very strong and fit, and he's very healthy, and his mind is still very healthy. But he's left that world behind now.
No, that's good. I mean, if there is such thing with the story of the Mafia princess, then it's a happy ending, really, I suppose. And you've got two wonderful kids who are now growing up, and the book has done very, very well. We've put the link down in the description there for you to go and buy it on Amazon. It's got to be made into a documentary, a film, or a TV program. What is there anything happening on that, Marisa, at this point, or can you not say?
No, I can say it's so it's going to be Amazon have bought the option. Well, it's an Italian production company has the option, which is partly owned by Fremantle Media. And then Amazon came on board after that, and Amazon doing new the first in Europe. So Spain's got the first Amazon series, France has got the first. And mine's going to be the first Italian Amazon Prime series, which I'm quite proud of, really. It's the first.
Should be.
Of course, it's in Italian, subtitled, but so is Gomorrah, isn't it? But a lot of people watch that. So hopefully,
I'm on the series. I'm on to series 3 of Gomorrah. That has took me on such a ride. I mean, it's something which I got pointed to by a couple of friends, and it's one of those that I tend to watch on trains. And obviously, with the COVID situation, I haven't been on many trains. So series 1 and 2, I watched quite quickly. Series 3, I only managed to get back into it last. But wow, I mean, But when you listen to your story and you read your book, then that program, I've got to be perfectly honest, doesn't seem quite as far-fetched.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah. I mean, I've had that. I've had critics sort of say, "Oh, is it actually real? And is it?" And I'm like, "Why would you make it up? There's so many things I haven't said, and why would I even want to? It's like this hasn't been. It's been a survival. It's been hard. Life has been hard. I look at my fridge. It's full. I'm rich." That's how it humbles you. It makes you but it's a survival. It's not nothing's handed to you. I've had to knock on doors and break doors down to be listened to or to get ahead, and that's all. And everything I've tried to do is always for my children, my grandchildren. I've got 2 grandchildren now, so yeah, but hopefully they've told me the end of this month they should start filming, because they were meant to film in back in March, and of course all this COVID and pandemic has stopped that. But fingers crossed they should start filming. Of course, it's all in Italy. The cast are actually on quarantine now, so fingers crossed it will happen. And I'm hoping back end of next year, beginning of the year after springtime, maybe. I don't know. It will be out there. So, and I know Amazon have put a lot into it.
Fantastic. Is it going to be? Is it going to be a little? Is it going to be a little cameo for Marisa in this?
I don't know. I'm not that bothered about, but like Alfred Hitchcock in the background.
yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I don't think, not this time. Maybe if there's a series 2, who knows?
Yeah.
But there'll be about 10 episodes, so hopefully, yeah.
Last couple of questions. Any regrets?
Of course, there's many of them. Many regrets. But saying that, you know, I can't take it back. And I could have easily been bitter and twisted at the end of all this, but I haven't. I've changed my life. I'm trying to make something out of something bad good with my criminology. I'm trying to sort of, as I said, I'm going to prison. I try and make people understand, you know, that it's just a vicious circle without patronizing anyone saying that, you know, and, you know, hopefully, because of that, I am at this point now to be able to do that. So I guess if it's taken that to get to here, and thankfully be myself, quite humble and all right person, then so be it. You know, it's I'd certainly, in a way, I don't know if this is right or wrong, but it's right for me. You know, I'd rather have lived my life than be, no disrespect to anyone, but to be stuck in an office 9 to 5. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But I would have, I don't know if I could. Maybe I say that because my life has been so different. And that to life to somebody is their norm and is their reality, and they're happy with it. Of course, you know, I'm not knocking that, but at least now I'm a bit, my eyes are wide open and a bit more on top of, you know, I can see things more, whether if I was closed in a bubble, I wouldn't be able to. So
last question. We always ask this to every, you know, reformed criminal that we have on the show, and that is, what advice would you give to some, you know, young girl who's contemplating even doing something illegal or getting involved in crime? What you know, if you had the chance to sit down in front of them, what would you tell them?
Don't do it. Do not do it, because it carries you with you for the rest of your life. Whether it's a minor, whether it's just a written warning, it will be there when you go for a job eventually, when you have your family, when you start away from the life of crime, which you will. It won't always be like that. You know, it won't, and it's not easy money because you're looking behind you all the time and you're not sleeping at night. And what I've actually realised is that you could earn damn good money legally.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's no reason, and you don't have to have a degree. You don't have to. If you've got a niche, if you've got something, you're clever, artistic, whatever, focus on that. Focus on that, and keep yourself, have respect for yourself. Don't be fooled by the gangster boy, or by the, you know, being pulled into that, and it's glamorous, and it's because it's not glamorous, especially if they get put inside. You'll be the one on visits. You'll have your children searched on a visit, not strip searched, but searched, patted down, a 2-year-old child, and one, you know, that's what your child will have to go through, and it's not nice.
No,
it's
not at
nice.
all.
It's not worth that. Not when you can earn good money legally. So
This has been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. You know, we've connected a while back, and I'm really pleased that I got you on. A big thank you to northbanktalent.com if you want to get onto their website as well. I've got some great guest speakers. One day I might even get taken on by them myself to do stuff about the Great Twins. You never know. But if you want to book Marisa, then please contact North Bank Talent Management. Great bunch of people, got some fantastic motivational speakers on from different fields, of which Marisa is one. And And last shout out for the book. That's the cover there. You can get that on Amazon. The link is below. Click on the link, takes you straight to it. And when you buy it, leave a review, because positive reviews on Amazon always help the book rise up the charts and stay at the top of the particular genre. So Marisa, have a great weekend. Much love, and I'm really pleased that things are going well for you, and I look forward to seeing your story come out on television in due course. But take care and stay safe.
And you.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.